I spent hours going through this debate video between Wes Huff, Dr. Stephen Boyce, Aaron Abke, and Kam Waters, and it's on Anton's YouTube channel, because I think it's really fascinating to see how narratives are created, especially on YouTube. And this debate video happened about 6 months ago now. And then there was a response video, and there was another response video. What I want to showcase today is how narratives are created in their own echo chambers and their own platforms, because I think what is showcased on a Aaron Abke and Kam Waters response video to the debate is not correct. And so you can see it clearly in how they responded in the response video versus how the debate actually took place. And we're going to be looking at a very specific part of the debate where they talk about Jeremiah 8:8. There are more parts that we can go over in the debate, but for this section, we're just going to go over their narratives and how they perceived what happened in the debate versus the tape of the debate. The first part is Aaron's and Kam's response video that they made and how they saw how it went.
Because a scribe has the responsibility to give to the people what a text.
We wanted to debate you about this, Steven, but it seemed like you guys didn't want to.
Strangely, Kam, they didn't actually push back on Jeremiah 8:8.
So their narrative is that they wanted to talk about Jeremiah 8:8, but that Steven and Wes didn't. And so let's look at what actually happened in the debate.
Correct. And we believe that those were the passages added by the lying pens of the scribes per Jeremiah 8:8, which Jesus rejected per Eusebius. Jesus did not participate or require sacrifices. And we even see this in the New Testament of him opposing sacrifices, quoting
You're
Hosea
saying that was
6:6.
added? You're saying it was added like it's an interpolation?
Yes.
Based on what manuscripts?
Based on what manuscripts?
What
Well,
manuscripts?
You're saying Jeremiah
What
said it.
manuscripts?
So it's important to look at what is an interpolation, as Stephen is pointing out, and as Aaron is confirming. Interpolation is where there are certain parts of the Bible or in any text where you have added text to it. And what they usually do is they usually look at old manuscripts and the newer manuscripts and saying, okay, if there are things added to the newer manuscript, therefore that could be an interpolation. The Longinate of Mark is kind of the most renowned one. Stephen is pushing back and saying, what manuscript evidence do you have? Because that's how they see if it's an interpolation or not.
You're saying it was added like it's an interpolation?
Yes.
Based on what manuscripts?
Based on what manuscripts?
What
Well,
manuscripts?
You're saying Jeremiah
what
said it.
manuscripts? What manuscripts of Leviticus?
Let Aaron answer.
Well, I just want to add something to that because I want to get to that. We can talk about that. But let's just take Leviticus at face value with the quote you just gave, Wes. What about Leviticus 5:11?
So what happens in this first part is Stephen actually pushes back against Jeremiah 8:8, and Kam deflects. He goes into another subject. It's brought up again later in the debate. So let's see what they do in the second part.
So weighing it against texts like Jeremiah 8:8, which Jesus seemed to be a big Jeremiah fan, that the lying pen of the scribes, the pen that writes the Torah, has falsified the Torah, and he condemns them for this. So it's claiming in the Bible itself that there are alterations that have weight. And he's the same prophet that's condemning animal sacrifice. He says God never commanded animal sacrifice. And why I want to bring up that point is because
that's not what he says.
Except where he does, you have to say that was added later too. And then you're just doing the same thing in the Old Testament that you're doing in the Gospels here. So you have to remove these things from the Old Testament to get that narrative. And then you have to remove those things in the New Testament and say, see, there's a narrative, when actually you're just doing exactly what Epiphanius condemns. You're doing exactly what Jerome was condemning. You're doing exactly what Eusebius is condemning. And that is, you have a belief system that has allowed you to add, remove, and edit text to make them what you want. And you're actually trying to use these men to defend your position when they're actually condemning your position, because you're doing the same thing that they were doing in their lifetimes. That's the summary.
You can see that Stephen and even Wes, in a way, pushed back against this. But in the response video that Aaron and Kam gave, they create their own narrative.
We wanted to debate you about this, Steven, but it seemed like you guys didn't want to.
Strangely, Kam, they didn't actually push back on Jeremiah 8:8.
But it's the opposite when you actually look at the footage.
Yes. Based on what manuscripts?
Based on what manuscripts?
Because you're doing the same thing that they were doing in their lifetimes. That's the summary.
I'm not using them to defend the position. I'm very aware that they see it as heresy. The point is, in fact, that they do see it as heresy as part of what we'd like to even talk about beyond that with letters of Paul and these kind of things that do start to contradict some of the earliest followers of Jesus. Jesus' own brother was the leader of the Jerusalem church, and he never touched animal flesh for consumption. You understand? So that,
but that has nothing to do with Jesus. That has nothing to do with Mary and Joseph.
But again, John the Baptist is taking people out to the desert.
We wanted to debate you about this, Steven, but it seemed like you guys didn't want to.
I wish that Steven and Wes would have pressed in a little bit more on these, because after the fact, Kam and Aaron changed the narrative of what happened in the debate. I think it's important that when you're watching, especially today on YouTube videos, is that if there's not an opposing view, if they're in their own echo chamber, no matter if, even if I agree with them or, you agree with somebody, is, do your own research, see what's happening. Is what they're saying is true? Because it's really easy for us to just listen to somebody and just take it as truth. But this is a clear example of, if you just watched Aaron and Kam's video, you would think that Steven and Wes never pushed back against this, but it's actually the opposite. Steven and Wes actually pushed back, and it was Kam that actually deflected and didn't want to actually press in, and Aaron didn't bring any evidence to the table.
We wanted to debate you about this, Steven, but it seemed like you guys didn't want to.
Strangely, Kam, they didn't actually push back on Jeremiah 8:8. Yes.
Based on what manuscripts?
Based on what manuscripts?